guys, welcome back to another exciting episode of Doc Lil Talks Comics. And tonight we're going to talk about a retro review with Amazing Spider-Man number 188. I picked this book up the other day. It's got this awesome Dave Cockrum and Terry Austin cover. And the writer is Marc Wolfman, with Keith Pollard doing layouts, Mike Esposito doing finishes, Jay Novak was letterer, Bob Sharon was colorist, and Jim Shooter was the consulting editor. So, this particular cover reminds me of the cover to number 28, I believe, which had the Molten Man. And instead, this time we have Jigsaw. And this is actually only the second appearance of Jigsaw, who turned out to be a pretty big Punisher villain in the end. But he's played somewhat comically in this particular issue, where he leads a heist, but he's scared of running into the Punisher. He's scared of running into any of these costume characters because he doesn't think that he can take them on, because he realizes that he's just a man underneath everything. But he also has kind of, not only is his face almost like a jigsaw, but his mind is fractured as well. And you can see that here, where his goons, they're like, you know, hey boss, we want to break something. We want to break into something. We want to steal something. Lead us. You're the leader. And so he says, all right, I'll lead you tonight, but it'll be a heist where we won't meet any of the costume do-gooders, okay? And they say, okay, fine. You know, we just want to get a piece of the action. We want to make something happen. So they end up headed toward this cruise ship, which oddly enough, Peter Parker, Mary Jane and her new beau, and Betty Brant all happen to be on. And of course, Spidey ends up getting involved, and Jigsaw flips out because he says, "Wait a minute, there wasn't any, how did Spider-Man even know that I was on this cruise ship? How did that even come about?" And we get all these cool ads. You get a Crossman air rifle, and then you've got this, which was getting subscriptions to different Marvel books. And actually, that says subscribe now to Pizzazz, Marvel's most off-the-wall mag, and get 6 months of your favorite comics for free. So you could choose Amazing Spider-Man, Avengers, Captain America, The Defenders, Fantastic Four, Invaders, Thor, even Star Wars, which at this point, you got to remember, this book came out in 1978, so Star Wars might have been on issue 9, issue 10, something like that by this point. So you're still getting those early issues. Well, Jigsaw ends up eventually letting Harry and Liz, who he has captured and taken as hostages, he lets them go. He says, okay, you gotta go, but you know, get out of here and don't look back or I'll shoot. And so they both run off, and he runs off, and he says, I gotta get out of here before, you know, Spider-Man or some other costume do-gooder comes and finds me. And he's paranoid. He says, I got to get away from him, get away from this blasted city. I got my gun, but can that stop him? And cripes, I hope so. And so he starts shooting, and then you see Spidey's eyes in the darkness, and he says his blasted eyes are staring at me. It's like some forsaken demon in the night. And eventually he ends up giving up to Spidey because he says, I can't shoot you in cold blood. You're right there in front of me, but I can't do it. So this was a good, solid issue of Amazing Spider-Man. And going back and looking at these old issues, it's like you have a concentrated narrative. And I know that Joe Kelly is a good writer, and that most modern comic book writers are decent about going from issue 13 to 14 to 15 to 16 and creating that flow. But at the same time, after reading this, there was so much more slowdown in the world. It's kind of like somebody mentioned to me earlier about me being on my phone a whole lot. part of it is I'm trying to maintain everything through this stressful time. And the other part of it is, I guess I've just gotten used to doom scrolling. And it's a time waster. It's an absolute time killer. And it takes you away from those that you love, those that you care about. But here in these older books, it's almost like you have time to build out these relationships with these characters. You know, Betty Brant and Peter are on the boat, and she came back. She left Ned Leeds at this point. And he says, well, Betty, it's us. And she said, us? What about us? That's just it. There isn't any us. There can't be any us because you're still married to Ned Leeds. And she says, well, I'm separated. I left him there, and there's nothing wrong with stopping to pick up something that never should have been let go of in the first place. And she says, I need you. I'm frightened about almost everything. Being alone, starting all over again. Please don't you reject me, Peter. So I like the fact that Amazing Spider-Man comes out twice a month. I do like that. But at the same time, maybe we're moving so quickly that you don't take the time in these books to stop and smell the roses anymore. There needs to be a more deliberate pace. And I've talked to a lot of my friends that have known me for years. And they said, what would you do if you got tapped to write Amazing Spider-Man? You know, if you ever break into the field like you want to, and you had the opportunity to get tapped. And I said, I would slow things down. I said, not to a snail's pace, but I would give him the adventure that we all crave to read in the pages of the Amazing Spider-Man, like these old issues of ASM were. But at the same time, I would give that characterization back. It wouldn't be bouncing from one to another, to over here, to back here. You have to take the time to learn the characters. You have to know them as real people. And in order to do that, I think that's why I enjoy reading these old issues, because you realize it's a month-to-month narrative. And like I said, as much as I love ASM, I'm going to crack issue 1000 next year. If and when they get to issue 1000, I wish that they would just drop it back to once a month. I would be so much happier, not just because it's $5 a month now per issue, but I would be so much happier with a slowed down tale from the wall crawler. I think it works better for his character. I know that he's in New York City, and I know that life never stops in New York City. It's the city that never sleeps. But I think in these books, maybe there needs to be some more sleep. There needs to be a slower, more methodical pace to get these stories out. That's why these retro reviews that I do, I hope you guys enjoy these, because it brings me joy to read these old stories, and they're not decompressed in a Brian Michael Bendis way, but they're decompressed in a way that you can really sit there and love what you're reading. And it's like you're reading about real people. And I think sometimes they've lost that in the modern books that are coming out. So what do you think about this retro review, guys? Leave me a like and a comment down below. And I've got a lot more great content coming up for you very, very soon.